Hey everybody, how's it going? A little bit of a fall look today. I have Rutgers football on the screen here. I'm taping this on Saturday, so you'll see it on Monday. Rutgers bond down 4 points. See what happens. Anyway, I hope you're doing well. Despite maybe like some of the comments you saw in like some of the papers, I actually was overall pleased with the work on the Rutgers vaccine story. But I do want to address that, and I did address it in a announcement in an email. And also, we have a new topic to introduce today, and that would be the feature news stories, which actually by now you might have actually already seen that the the assignment that's actually listed for it. So anyway, that is basically a basically it's just like our next, I would say, next step in development in terms of writing. I realize that we have other assignments out there that need to be done, which I'll address. We actually only have about a month and a half left. So as of right now, I am uncertain whether we're going to have just our major assignment proposal and this feature story left to do other than the megalomania assignment. we may have another assignment on top of that. I'll let you know. But let's first of all look at the schedule. Okay, what's due? All right. Let's get that away. And all right. So actually, let's tell you what. Let's go right here first. Actually, and I should be in student view. I always make a mistake, right? Okay. All right. So here we go. So we have done the first, second, and third assignments, although the third assignment now actually there's a rewrite due for that. Okay, so the upcoming assignments under upcoming assignments. It's not necessarily the order I would allow to put things in here, but you can see there's also a couple of chapters left to read. We'll go over chapter 12 today because it deals with feature writing. But what's left is here we have the rewrite of the third assignment, which is due on November 8th. Okay. Sorry, not the feature assignment, the Rutgers vaccination story, reaction story, I should say. And then we have we actually have, and then of course on Monday, which is supposed to be today, basically, we have the Megalomania press release summit that granted the extension, and that from Thursday to Monday. Okay, don't forget that. All right. And of course, we also have the major assignment proposal, which, I think a couple of people have actually submitted them already, but anyway, I will look over those after Monday. Okay. And I'll let you know if they are acceptable or not. Okay. So I did go over that last week in last week's video. Okay. I really just talking about the let's go to the Rutgers vaccination reaction. Okay. I mean, this is supposed to be an introductory level class, and yeah, I'm going to be basically be tough sometimes, and maybe people might not like it, but I was actually, like I said, pleased with a lot of the writing, and sometimes when I read the assignments, I say to myself, is it me or whatever? And it could be me, certainly. Maybe I'm not reaching enough, maybe I'm not connecting enough. I don't know. But when I do see actually people more than half the class essentially get it, then I'm going to basically probably going to be redirected toward you if I feel like you're not doing it the way you're supposed to be doing it. Okay. But it's pretty clear to me. And again, I mean, you could call this circumstantial evidence or what, but as I wrote in this note here, I basically say that I can tell if people haven't been watching the videos. There's a few obvious signs, especially very long paragraphs. Maybe you haven't been watching enough of the videos, not you haven't been watching them. Use of a third person, not third. I'm sorry. I should say first. But anyway, so anyway, actually, let me actually correct that right now. Actually, I should say first. Okay. use of first person, not third, okay? We only do the third person in this because the third person is supposed to be objective, okay? All right, so anyway, I've been quite clear about that one. I mean, I believe it's even in the syllabus that we don't write in first person's class. This is supposed to be the basic, fundamental reporting class where you basically, because the idea is that most people have not actually learned journalism when they're in high school or before. The only training you've had essentially is the actual reading of the newspaper itself, the news organization itself, or watching on television, okay? But my hope is that maybe like what you are, you'll already know, you'll have some idea, because everybody reads news at some level or not. I mean, whether it's on like social media or whatever, but you'll have some idea. And one of the things you probably will see is that you probably won't see a lot of first person reporting in in news articles, this sort of thing. So that is actually like the reason why I don't teach in first person, besides the fact that it's not objective, okay, because I'm supposed to be teaching objectivity in this class, but first person actually writing is actually really hard to do and do it well and do it effectively. I know it's something we've done in school before, but to actually, like, you ever read like a story that's like a first person account or something like that, and you just say to yourself, oh God, this person just can't help but saying I, me. It's just, it comes across as like, if you can't do it, if you can't really like put yourself in observational mode and really kind of do that effectively, it doesn't work, so the same thing with opinion writing, because in this class I preach the importance of being accurate, clear, and focused. But once you get into opinion writing, you not only have to be accurate, clear, and focused, but you have to be persuasive. You have to add almost like a whole element of writing ability there, which is difficult. It's difficult to convince people, especially people who just don't want to, learn anything. Don't want to hear about it. It's difficult to basically, get people to like be convinced of something. Okay. And good news, Rutgers, I believe, just got a field goal. Oh no, they missed. So anyway, sorry about that. So anyway, so things like that, I mean, probably this one right here, like using, like, if you had issues with people like, using their name, because I know this actually could be a controversial topic, believe it or not. So I can almost understand like maybe why people opted to go that way, but we actually did have people in the discussion point actually go on the record with their name, so you could use them too, So there's really no reason to be using anonymous sources or just person like first name. It makes me question whether you actually did try to get that person's name or something, So this is all stuff, like I said, I discussed in videos. So, I mean, like, I'm not trying to single people out here, but I mean, here's an example. I mean, right away, I can tell this story is just not there. Okay. Interesting thing about this story is that it actually, if you actually like turn it into actually a typical news story, it actually can work pretty well. Okay. But I mean, actually it starts off okay in the first sentence, but I mean, look at these very long paragraphs. I don't even have to read that to know that's just not right. It looks like a textbook. It's not very inviting, I mean, the idea with paragraph breaks is that it gives you a break. It gives you a break as you're reading, a time to breathe, time to stop if you want to, okay? So Rutgers University students have mixed opinions about the vaccine mandates that were enforced. Okay, that's fine. Then it says, I have interviewed 5 people from 5 different schools. Okay, so first of all, violation there is that you're inserting yourself into the story. No good. Okay, second of all, this is not supposed to be a survey, okay? It's supposed to be a story, okay? So I really have to ask you, how many times have you seen that in a news story? Somebody writing, have you seen it in the New York Times or even like, a local paper or something like that? Somebody saying, I have interviewed 5 people from 5, you don't have to say that, okay? This is not a research paper, okay? I'm not asking you to do a hypothesis. And then we have like, the first person quoted here, basically saying she claims that the vaccine should be required for all students. She says that getting vaccinated is the only way to stop the spread of COVID. Okay, right there, paragraph break. That's all you need. A couple paragraphs. See how it's already like gives you a break. It's almost it's more inviting just right there. And it makes it even what's being said make it even stand out more, like it's being singled out, you know. It's a very artsy perspective here with this whole, you know, structuring of the story and everything. But that's what it is. It's been scientifically proven that the vaccine works and actually helps people. Okay. Um, I mean, yeah, I agree with that, and I mean, I believe I consider that fact. So, um, but you know, you just have to be a little bit careful there. You have like somebody citing the CDC. Okay, that's good. But again, you know, maybe like a paragraph here. You know, okay. Then we have Patel here, a sophomore at Rutgers, also shares a similar view. Patel says that the Rutgers has required vaccines for things like hepatitis, measles, chickenpox. So why would they be different on this paragraph? Okay. She says that no one complained about getting these vaccinations. You actually have good information, just that, you know, like I wrote here, but it's like a textbook. Okay. Okay. I mean, this all this needed. New paragraph. Bang. Yeah. Bang. Okay. You know, so, you know, basically now, doesn't it look a little more inviting? Like you said, like maybe you kind of like would want to even like take a stop if you want to, like, you know, it gives you the opportunity to like bug out of the story if you want, that sort of thing. Okay. So we need to keep doing that. Okay. That's why, I mean, I felt validated when I started to read the stories actually did work. And I mean, right here, following the structure that I've talked about already, you have the lead, which is Rutgers students have mixed opinions about the college's advancing mandate, but the majority agrees that they have mixed opinions, but the majority agrees that it makes the campus a safer environment. So it's always, this is the idea and the angle. Basically, you have the overall idea that people, Rutgers students are expressing their opinion, but then what you're doing here is essentially the angle is to find a general consensus for how people feel. Okay. And what this student did was from Kellyanne was basically like find that consensus that the majority feels that it makes the campus a safer environment. Okay. And then you essentially have a transition here, which she has a person basically introducing the first point to back up that mixed opinion argument. And she feels the school, like other people, essentially are taking the proper steps to ensure the safety of students, but also staff and visitors as well. And then we got an anecdote, which is what I've talked to people about, is saying this is where you give a student the opportunity to provide an experience or maybe an observation, something they've seen that compels them to feel this way. And that's the slice of life I'm talking about. Okay, basically, and it's just a couple of sentences here. It's not something anything daunting. Rather, is a commuter who lives at home with their parents. We get a little personal here, you know. I mean, I'm asking you to even interview people you know for these assignments so you can get this kind of good information, you know. Both of them are immunocompromised. She has no worries of getting COVID herself, but the thought of carrying the sickness home to her parents terrifies her. I mean, isn't that really good reporting? It's really kind of like getting there. It's really kind of giving you some real world feel for like why she feels the way she does, you know? And because of that mandate, she doesn't feel too scared about coming to class. And then a quote, you know, very simple quote. I'm very grateful that Rutgers decided to mandate the vaccines. It's like a breath of relief, knowing that 9 times out of 10, no serious harm. And I mean, there was some additional opinion here, which is good from her. Then we go to another transition. We got Robert Bobko doesn't exactly support the mandate. So now we go to the other side because it's mixed opinions, but he is not completely against it. So this is like a transition to the next point. He wanted to get an so we got a little personal anecdote here. You know, wanted to get an exemption, but he was annoyed when the university told him he had to get it. He had to get it if you were to live on campus. Okay, and then a quote. Okay. All right. So yeah, so you have a week to redo that. So let's do that. Okay, let's get it right. If you want to like send it to me beforehand, let me know. Okay. And you know, I can like give you some idea if you're on the right track. Okay. Just kind of going over my things here. All right. So, all right. And also another thing is I actually wrote on this in a bunch of papers that, I mean, because some people just were totally far afield, to be honest with you, that I said, you know, you got to meet with me, you know, you just got to Zoom with me. We got to set up something. I probably did that with maybe about between 5 and 8 people, and yeah, maybe 5 people, and I only heard back from one. So, you know, that's where I mean, it's hard to like grade for class participation when you're an asynchronous Zoom class, but you know, that's where I look, you know, for that kind of thing. I expect you to kind of respond to that and get back to me, that sort of thing. So, you know, all right. So, you know, I've been doing a little trick and nice, like I've been putting important points in the middle of like these lectures too. Like last week, I gave you guys like I gave away the store on the Megalomania assignment. So I'm hoping that maybe like I'll see on Monday, after Monday, see if anybody actually did watch the whole video and then they got the information they needed to get. I did notice that more people did watch it and were actually like, that's good. Thank you for that. And you know, we got more up to speed on the whole assignment, even if it was maybe a little late. Okay. But you really should watch these videos, like I would say within a couple of days after I put them out. I know you got a million things to do, but just really, I mean, like we have no class here. We have to, I mean, no classroom here. We got to do something. Okay. All right. So let's go to the new topic at hand. Okay. And it is feature news. Yay. I actually provide two ways of like essentially two sources of reading material here, but one of them including the book. Okay, so feature stories are basically, what are they? Well, they are the lighter news, okay? It is the part of the news page, let's see, or maybe it doesn't necessarily appear at the top of the news site or the newspaper. Okay, it doesn't appear here about some story about G20 leaders, but you know, they might put it like over here off to the side a little bit. Just a little bit curious to know if like, actually that sounds like it's a little bit of news, newsy story, getting rid of the Confederate flag at NASCAR. Like that shouldn't have happened already, for crying out fucking odd. This looks like it might be like a little, this is, I hate to use the word feature or light, but you know, feature stories essentially are stories that provide balance to the news, okay? We're seeing a lot less of it nowadays because you know, news staffs have been cut. And, you know, they're kind of viewed as a bit like not as important as the other stories, obviously. The most important thing to do right now is to come out with the traditional hard news, you know. But, you know, the top organizations like the New York Times, they still do it. And the idea is that we want to give you the full reading experience. We want to give you not just the news that may be bad or like the press US sort of thing, but maybe news that's maybe inspirational or maybe like, or even like something that'll provide an extension to the sadder news that's out there and probably perhaps help explain things. Here we have the Alec Baldwin you know, story that basically it continues to go on, but basically we're finding new angles to it, and the feature angles could be essentially work as essentially sidebars. They don't necessarily tell the main story, but what they do is they kind of tell like a new angle to it, and what they do is they're written in a way it's called writing to be read. These stories, I've said all semester that news stories are mostly read first paragraph, that's it, out. But there is actually an attempt, and this is what such a feature stories do, and also analytical stories are kind of fall into that. Okay, is that they give you the opportunity to, you know, they want you to actually read the story from top to bottom. So they're written in a more engaging way. Okay, so what this story does here is actually a kind of, instead of like bam giving you the news right at the top, it actually kind of walks you through, and even in a suspenseful way. That, you know, will kind of like then finally will basically work to hook you into reading the whole story, almost like a mystery novel would, where it kind of like will work at providing clues and hints and mystery and teases until finally the big reveal. Okay, well, that's similar to the way a feature story is. Essentially the same story. They're essentially the same, structure to it. Just the lead is really the different part. Okay, the lead, instead of being essentially one or maybe two paragraphs, can be like 5, 6 paragraphs, and it kind of works at building things up and getting you hooked into the story. Okay, so let's see what it's got here. See, Alec Baldwin was on the set of his latest film, a low-budget Western called Rust. working on a scene in which his character, a grizzled outlaw named Harlan Rust, finds himself in a small wooden church. So basically, we have a story that's going to break down everything that happened. But the idea here is that it kind of teases you in the first paragraph. It doesn't tell you everything you need to know about the story. It's actually the opposite, almost, in a way. The first paragraph, instead of like telling you almost everything you need to know, it almost tells you too little. And the idea is to kind of hook you, make you want to read that next paragraph. But it's written in a way that's like suspenseful, okay? Baldwin on the set. We've already known this story. This is why it's a feature. Everybody's heard this freaking story, right? I mean, it's a horrible story. Somebody died, somebody was injured, the whole thing. All sorts of things are coming out about this. But this story is going to now kind of try to deconstruct everything that happened. And what it's going to do is going to walk you one step at a time, like you're almost there at the set, okay? Members of the small crew, including the director, cinematographer, cameraman, and script supervisor, cluster around Mr. Baldwin. See, there's even a little more description there, too. You see that a lot more in these feature stories, okay? Start to actually show pictures of things with using words. Clustered around Mr. Baldwin inside the cramped Spartan set. Location is on a sprawling ranch. Again, we're just kind of like getting scenes painted here, one step at a time. Everybody kind of knows what happens here, but it's kind of suspenseful. Maybe it's gonna lead to a big reveal, perhaps, of some sort, maybe like some sort of minor reveal, or maybe new reveal about it, that'll provide like some sort of fresh angle to the story. It's just that it's going to build up suspense to get there, okay? As light poured through the church's windows, casting slanted rays in the dust that swirled the pews, a shadow fell, and the crew had to adjust the crowd angle. Then it was time for Mr. Baldwin, who was seated on the pew, to practice the scene. The crew had been assured the gun was cold. Okay, in fact, it was not. Suddenly, there was a loud noise, and the director, Joel Souza, later told the executive it sounded like a weapon and a pop. Okay, and unfortunately, this person was killed. Okay, now suddenly, like, we get what they call the nut graph. I'll write it right here, the nut graph. Okay, so you have a tease, and a tease, and this is the paragraph that essentially works like the lead. Another term for it is a delayed lead. Okay, so yeah, instead of having this one paragraph, bam, there it is. It works one paragraph at a time, is kind of building up suspense and getting to the big or new reveal of some sort. And the new reveal essentially is that this story is basically going to tell you like how everything happened from point A to point B. That's essentially the theme of the story. What happened here? What exactly happened here? From step A to step Z, okay? So the questions of why there was any live ammunition on a movie set, where it was usually forbidden, and how a revolver loaded with a lethal round was placed in the hands of an actor have started a complicated inquiry as law enforcement officials in New Mexico try to determine whether negligence on the set of Rust rose to the level of a crime. It has raised questions about firearm safety in sets and whether proper procedures were taken. So basically, this is a story about, okay, what happened and how it raised questions, okay? And then actually, this is almost like essentially a 2-paragraph nut graph, because it's not just that, but it's also like, it says those core questions remain unanswered, but a reconstruction of events based on court papers, and that's essentially what the story is about. Makes it clear that a cascading series of mistakes led to a fatal moment, okay? And then what happens is it actually, I know they put subheads in here and everything, it kind of goes into that transition anecdote, in kind of like in a loose way, but it goes into that transition anecdote, quote format, which, try to stick to as close as possible. But, basically it transitions to the first point, basically saying like, okay, what's the first thing that happened here? This actually is a story where it works in chronological order. So it says the first transition basically talks about the first thing that happened at 6:30 a.m. and there was a problem the night before. The tensions on the set came to a battle over the working conditions of the industry. So maybe once it gets more granular and detail, essentially is an anecdotal information. Mr. Baldwin arrived on the set, okay, and then it goes on from there, okay. All right. So how does that work exactly? Okay. Well, let's look at like my that's the assignment. We'll get to that in a second. So what you essentially have here is, here's your hard news story, okay? Or traditional news, okay? you have your lead, you have your anecdote, I'm sorry, transition, you have your anecdote, and maybe a quote. It doesn't mean you don't have a quote there, maybe you don't, but it usually kind of follows that format. Sometimes a story can be just like essentially like just transitions, making one new point after another, okay? But the lead and transitions are the most important points. But the stories I give you are essentially like the vaccine story and this story, they really need some anecdotes, okay? Anecdote, and then a quote, transition, anecdote, quote, okay, and then on and on and on. Okay, so once we get to a feature story, or like to call it maybe a Sunday news story or a light feature story or whatever, light news, soft news, another term they use, okay? The difference is really here. Okay, now in this one, I mean, like the anecdote, I mean, becomes more important because it actually, you get more description. Each, once you get into that anecdotal information, you get like that kind of thing they talked about clustered around Baldwin. You get that kind of description. You get a little bit more detail about the where they are, okay? So you do have to like do a little more about trying to not just like when you actually paint a scene of like where somebody is or what they're doing, maybe you describe, if you can, a little bit like what's there. Okay, the assignment I'm going to give you is about the weather, and it's purposeful because it almost forces you to write about the things you see, because when everything changes the fall, everything, all the colors change and everything else, like on the trees and everything else. So anyway, but the big thing is right here is in the lead. Okay, the lead essentially becomes several paragraphs, and what that becomes is essentially what starts off with like essentially ATs, like we saw there with the Baldwin thing, like basically like one point at a time, one thing that kind of like hook you into the story. Another, I mean, this could be a couple paragraphs long, the T's maybe, another thing to hook you in, another thing to hook you in, it's maybe a little vague, the T's, and then the nut graph. The lead essentially is that, it actually accompanies all that stuff, okay? Bring you along slowly and suspensefully, okay? All right, I mean, this is actually something, again, I mean, I don't get to get all this information like in your head like right away. This is, again, something that's really best done through practice, okay? Yes, that's actually an assignment which I'll get to in a bit. All right, so what I did was actually, not only did I actually read chapter 12, and I give you an example of another story, a feature story with an anecdotal lead here, but also an old story. I used to do like a website for the class, and I don't anymore. It's a long story, but anyway, I give you another example of a feature story that basically kind of works in that kind of format. Rutgers sophomore Claire, I can't pronounce her last name, quickly looked at the Rutgers University next bus, and in 5 minutes, she immediately left her apartment. She quickly approached the bus stop, but she found the bus leaving. Frustrated, she cursed at the bus. And thanks to next bus, she waited at the bus stop for 10 minutes when she could have been waiting in her warm apartment. See, it's like one thing at a time, and you can even get a quote in there or something like that, okay? So you have like basically like one thing, she does this one thing, she does this next thing, she does this next thing, next bus sucks, I'm so tired of running, blah, blah, blah. And then this person is just one of many students at Rutgers. This is the nut graph, who feel the Rutgers bus system can waste a lot of the students' time. So that's what the theme of the story is, okay? And then we get a transition. Many students say that when traveling from one campus to another, half hour, an hour. So we talk about, that's our first point, is about time, okay? Then we have an anecdote. Junior has always had to deal with taking the bus during rush hour. Carol has had, has to frantically rush out of the class to get to the bus stop because there's always a crowd, but she's left waiting, okay? And then a quote. For sophomore Mafia DeFries, the bus system has helped her become more organized, okay? So Rutgers is having workshops. It's like another, it's not a very long story, but it's another transition there. So it kind of follows that same format, okay? So let's look at what they have to say about it and what this all means. So writing feature stories says here, this is actually on your module under feature news, okay? You'll see it's like one of the last modules we'll have, okay? And by the way, just so you know, again, I have another module that deals with, deals with data journalism. We'll see if we're going to be doing that or not, okay? I'll let you know. All right, so anyway, what we got here? Okay, so Differentiating feature stories from news stories is misleading. The two actually have a great deal in common. The difference is in emphasis. The styles that are commonly used for feature stories assume that the reader has more time to read. There you go. Again, the idea though is that like this is the kind of, you know, when they really like mattered, like to have like a Sunday paper was like actually considered to be the biggest paper. And I showed you essentially where a feature story, they still are there, but they're usually like put lower on the website or on the side or something like that. They're not the lead. They're not expected to be the first thing to be read or looked at or anything, but they're kind of a story for that person who has time. It's the difference between basically this person who takes a train on, it's a little corny, but whatever, takes a train during a weekday and the person who takes a train on a weekend. The idea is that the person taking a train on a weekday doesn't have a lot of time to read, so they just read the first paragraph and they're done, they're gone. I mean, because they have to get to work, the whole thing. Person taking a train on a weekend is probably trying to get into the city, they have time, they have to go see an exhibit, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So maybe they're kind of waiting for the next train, and the trains don't happen more sporadically. They may be not for there for another hour. So, you know, they could sit there on the bench and read, you know, and that sort of thing, and they have the time, okay? That's what Sunday papers used to do. Sunday papers, you know, used to be really thick, still are, you know, but we really, again, it's not a big deal anymore so much, but that's when they would actually, when I worked at newspapers a long time ago, 25, 30 years ago, back then, that was like a big deal. We actually used to save stories for the weekend. We used to actually have, you know, stories that actually we would actually write during the week. So we actually would put them, because that was actually the highest readership day. Now the highest readership day is like Monday or Tuesday or something like that, because now the internet is something that's read in offices and something like that, stuff like that. So it's, and Sunday's a day, people are just too damn busy. It's not like considered a day off for a lot of people anymore. I know, I don't mean to be sacrilegious there, but you know, so, or maybe they just got too much else to do, or they're watching TV, or they're looking at their phone. They just, you know, whatever. Anyway, so going back to this, the writer must be able to summarize the point of the story, much like he would do in this story, but the writing may require that the reader make further and fully understand the point of the story. So yeah, maybe we got a little more depth in terms of like the color, as they call it, you know, maybe the description. Also kind of like, you know, building up the stories so kind of like in suspenseful way. It's a way for readers and writers to get away from the relevant facts only approach. Feature stories generally contain more detail and description, okay? The reader of the feature story seems to have a more relaxed style of writing. Yeah, it's true. It may be easier to read than a news story, and because of its content, it could be more entertaining even. I mean, actually, a lot of your stories of entertainment are like written this way, okay? Except for obviously horrible tragedy like a shooting on a film set. But I'm talking about in terms of like, you know, an actual story on a movie or the movie being made or something like that. Great amount of details again. News writer wishes to transmit a basic facts. That's what a news story writer would do. Hard news. The feature writer tries to enhance the facts with details and descriptions so that the reader will be able to see a more complete picture, okay? All right, so there's like, this is from an older textbook, which I think she does a better job than the current textbook and really kind of showing differences here, okay? So we have our news story structure. Actually, I think maybe the best comparison here is we have a traditional lead here, giving the who, what, where, how, why, when. God, they say ending, and I always tell you no conclusion, but anyway, end with a significant information, least significant information. That's what it says there. That's another thing to actually keep in mind about, you know, there's other backup to why I don't like concluding the story. You don't have to conclude the story here. Please ignore that, but whatever. But anyway, the feature story essentially would be, you know, what they call another term for it besides delayed lead and not graph is a narrative lead, okay? Describe a dramatic point. It could be, it's like also like having that those points come at one at a time like that, that builds up drama, okay? Dramatic steps, one after another, create a narrative suspense, foreshadowing even, okay? Maybe you can open up with a scene that teases the story or something, okay? That sort of thing, okay? Then I offer like essentially like, again, there's like, again, more talk about the nut graph. Essentially, you have the inverted pyramid working once again. There's more to read about it here, writing the lead, the whole thing. But, oh, Rutgers is winning. All right. 17-14, sorry. Acting like the movie Up, Squirrel. I got some other material in here. Here we go. Another term for it is the anecdotal lead, because you're essentially taking another thing to do is taking like an anecdote, material again that's like somebody's experiencing or observing, and put that at the top. Essentially, the stuff that maybe you put in the middle of the story, you put at the top. Okay. All right. So like some examples of straight news lead. Okay. After mass protests, legislators have abruptly reversed their positions, blah, blah, blah. Now here's an anecdotal lead. At the dilapidated morgue in the northern Brazilian city of Natal, director Marcos Brando walks over the blood-smeared floor to where the corpse are kept. Oh, that's awful. He points out the labels. Okay, so yeah, like description kind of leading to the main point. Okay. All right, that's all right there. I thought that, again, I feel like the reading material is better and more relevant from a previous textbook, so I put that in here. But I did ask you guys to actually read chapter 12, which then goes into some of the same things. Finding story ideas and gathering information. Almost everything everyone sees or does behind it, journalists just have to open their eyes and ears. Okay, so that's actually like power. Actually, that's actually like another good point about feature stories. Essentially, is that there's more of an opening and eyes and ears to the story. Okay. All right. All right. So, and a lot of that time is, again, it's like, it works as like essentially like maybe you take like a main story, like a horrible tragedy, like the Baldwin shooting, and you try to find some sort of sidebar issue that maybe like provides depth, or maybe again is something that, like I said, like to be something weather related, or maybe something that involves like a certain frustrating involving like going back to school with COVID and everything and the masks and everything else. And there's something about that, maybe it requires issue would be a little more engaging if it had a story with more depth and suspense and drama written to it. Okay. The lead of a feature story, the only requirement for the lead of a feature story is that it interests people, making them want to stay and learn more. So basically, again, what I had to say before. Okay. I mean, some of this may kind of contradict a little bit what I say, but I mean, it's like, basically, like I said, you really just need to like basically just have a essentially engagement story that kind of like especially starts off with like engaging people, and then just kind of continues to engage people by following the similar format of lead anecdote, lead transition anecdote quote, but basically like provides description and maybe dramatic material, whatever. It actually does a better job of hooking people in. Typically, like profiles, I know we did a profile, it wasn't a feature story, but typically if we were to do that story again, this is how I would ask you to write it. It was essentially like a story with a delayed lead or anecdotal lead, that sort of thing. Usually profiles or personality features are typical feature stories. Okay. More examples of that stuff here. Stories that kind of look back on history and like how they might be relevant nowadays. Stories that deal with like a good point here is adventures. You'll see that. I mean, a lot of the TV news and everything that goes out and they actually explore things like your National Geographic stuff. That's like actually very featurey because it's very detail oriented. This falls under the Baldwin story, falls under this explanatory things that maybe deconstruct or talk about a crime scene or what happened. Features on the unique things that happened. Yes, this is sometimes an opportunity for people to do first person stuff. Yes, contradicting what I said before, but yes, that is an opportunity to do that too, as it says here. Okay. All right, so let's see here what we got here. All right, so here's your next assignment, which actually, if you go to, actually, let me show you where we're at. Let's go under assignments. All right, so it's now listed, it's the 5th assignment, yay. And the feature story instructions are right here. You just click on it. It's actually a Microsoft Word doc. This right here is just more material. That's actually what I just showed you. That's actually in the module. It's just more, that's actually this. It's the same thing I was showing you guys before, okay? So make sure you saw it, okay? Anyway, so what does this talk about? This is this right here. So what I just want you guys to do, okay, and then we can like go maybe talk about this next week. So you want you to write a story that will require you to flex your creative muscles. Okay, you are required to use an anecdotal lead with a nut graph. These leads describe action in narrative form. The narrative brings you to a nut graph, which ultimately answers the question, what is the story about? Okay, as much as we described before. Make note of the details you see. What are people wearing? Is it cold outside? This is a weather story. Can you see their breath? Is it raining? Do people look tired? Try to be funny if you can, even, I mean, within limits, okay? Not too crazy. Maybe show irony, okay? Like, I mean, right here, Walter Shrub wore sandals as he rode the bus. It was warm, okay? I just kind of made this up, okay? On Tuesday, it was cold, but Shrub was wearing, a lot of people like your age and everything, they do this, right? My children do this. Why? I'm protesting the cold, he said. I hope God see this. This is Mother Nature. So basically, this is a story, would be a story about students that maybe are having a hard time transitioning to colder weather, okay? But what we're doing is we're kind of starting over the T's, basically looking at one person, an anecdote, okay? It basically talks about how they don't like the weather and how they're protesting against it, okay? All right, so here's your idea. Interview people about the changing seasons amid COVID. Yes, I know. I mean, I'm putting that in there because I know it's still a thing. And, obviously, like, it's still, people have to deal with masks and that sort of thing. I know that could be even a weather issue itself. But, basically, it's largely about the weather and just adjusting to it as we return to campus. Describe the color of the leaves, the grass, and the sky. Write a story about how people don't appreciate this time of year. Are they going outside? What do they think about it? Are they feeling better now that vaccines are available? So it's basically the weather and basically but tied into this fact that we're still dealing with this COVID stuff. Okay. To help you guys out, I've actually asked for a discussion point. I've actually asked for people to participate in this discussion point. Okay. So it says, please use the latest discussion point as a resource for your story. Please make sure to contribute to it. Class participation matters. And then, yes, I'm actually looking at that as a class participation opportunity. Make sure you're involved and you're engaged. And if you actually click on discussions, you'll see it and you'll be able to answer to it. Okay, and there it is, discussion of new assignment. Please give your opinion on the weather. You click on that and then you can reply to it. And basically, it offers some questions here. How are you feeling about the weather at Rutgers? Do you find this time of year to be more difficult or less difficult? Can you provide an example of how this time of year is better or worse? Can you compare this year to last when COVID prevented you from being on campus? Okay, just trying to provide some opportunity for you to talk. Please put your name on it. Okay, that sort of thing. I hope this is not too controversial. Okay. All right, so that's really it. That's our new assignment. Okay. And look, if you got anything else you want to know, any other questions, please reach out to me. Let's have a discussion, especially if you're having trouble still. And let's talk, let's have a Zoom, the whole thing. Okay. Thanks very much, and I will talk to you.